Soup and sandwiches for anybody but the first team. It's actually getting worse than that. You've been basically making up stuff today. A beautiful one from one of the listeners saying, the next Manchester United game, I'm going to hold up a sign saying, Bruno, do you want my shirt?
It's an interesting one. They've said that they're going to offer, instead of free lunches at Old Trafford, they're just going to give people fruit.
That's right. Let them eat fruit. Is what they've said. That'll be free. I think they're going to have to start paying for their lunch. Anyway, look, let's have a look at this in a bit more detail. This new raft of redundancies and changes to the financial structure at Old Trafford. Alex Crook, our chief football correspondent, joins us. Hi, Alex.
Yeah, good afternoon, boys. That Bruno banner potentially did make me chuckle, I've got to say.
It's a corker, wasn't it? You could just, I mean, if somebody did it, it would be a beauty. Yeah, no such thing as a free lunch anymore, Alex.
No, they're a headline writer's dream, aren't they? Manchester United. They've released a stout statement in the last 15 minutes or so, confirming what they're calling the latest corporate restructuring that's taking place. We're going to see more staff move from Old Trafford to the training ground at Carrington, so that becomes more of a hub for the football club. Redundancies, that's the word you don't want to see, but they're confirming in this statement, Manchester United, that as many as 200 people could lose their jobs. That's in addition to the 250 people that we already know have been made redundant. So it could be up to 450 by the time Ineos and the United hierarchy are finished with these latest cuts. As you mentioned there, no longer free lunches available to staff working at Old Trafford. They estimate Manchester United that's going to save them £1 million a year. Now, that sounds a headline figure. And I appreciate there aren't too many workforces around the country who get free lunches. But when you look at some of the wages that are being paid to, well, people like Mason Mount in particular, who obviously is nowhere near the team at the minute because of injury. Casemiro, I think we can all see that his best days are behind him, but he's still earning in excess of 300 grand a week. So I think optically, once again, they've misread the situation here in Ineos. And the big elephant in the room, and there's comments from Omar Barada, the chief executive, in this statement talking about having a responsibility to put the club in the strongest position to win, both in terms of the men's and the women's team. He mentions Barada that they've lost money for each of the past 5 years. He says it can't continue. Well, the reason they're losing money is because of the Glazers and the way that they financed the purchase of the football club. The interest payments on the loans they took out to take over at Old Trafford have topped £1 billion. Now, if the Glazers just turned those into personal loans rather than had them loaned with interest paid by the football club, then there would arguably not be any need to do any of this.
Yeah, it does all feel a bit like tinkering around the edges. I'm sure, Simon was talking about earlier on, and from a business point of view, you would say, take care of the pennies, the pounds will take care of themselves, and these all add up. And I'm sure they do, and maybe it was a bit bloated, and maybe there was money to be saved. But as you said, the optics of it, with everything else that's going on, paying off coaches, paying inflated fees for players that aren't up to it in many people's eyes on long contracts, just doesn't play well.
No, it doesn't. And obviously that's before we talk about the fact that they've increased the ticket prices now for junior members. I've taken my kids to Old Trafford this season, probably paid 40 quid a ticket. You're now talking 66 quid a ticket. I've got 3 kids under the age of 16. That mounts up. And what you're doing there is you're pricing out a future generation of supporters. And so Jim Ratcliffe, who's putting his name to these cuts, and I do think in some ways he's become a bit of a battering ram, a bit of a shield on behalf of the Glazer family. He claims that he was a young Manchester United fan who used to pay to go and watch the team. So the fact that he's stopping young supporters doing that, again, just doesn't sit right. And you're right, it's all about that word optics. And I think they need to find a way, and they're trying to find a way to reduce the cost of the squad, to reduce these bloated and inflated wages that they've been paying for too long. To put it into context, was anybody else queuing up to give Casemiro a contract worth 350 grand a week? Yeah. Of course they weren't, because he was past it at the top level when United signed him. He had one good season, but Graham Souness didn't make himself very popular at the time for describing Casemiro as a steady Eddie. But in terms of how it's worked out at Manchester United, he's probably right.
Of course, these cuts are making big headlines because it's alongside the fact that the team have underperformed again this season. I mean, because the new owners, they've come in, they gave Ten Hag a new contract and then got rid of him and had to pay him off and stuff like that. I mean, do you think there's a danger of the fans kind of turning on the new owners before they've even really got started?
They already have. There's been songs sung about Sir Jim Ratcliffe and Ineos. There was an angry confrontation. I think it was after United beat Fulham recently at Craven Cottage when a few supporters approached Sir Jim Ratcliffe as he was driving his car and exchanged some hard words with him. So Yeah, I think morale among the staff, from what I'm told, is at an all-time low, and I think morale in the stands as well is at an all-time low, and the atmosphere at Old Trafford has been lacking this season, partly because the team have been so poor on the pitch, but I think also partly because of what's going on off the pitch. And there is a suggestion by making some of these staff redundant, and I agree that probably the staff bill is bloated compared to some other big clubs in the Premier League. United just trying to airbrush history, because the only thing that United have got at the moment is their history. Because the present is pretty miserable and the future doesn't look too bright either.
And you know, people are upset finally, Alex, because the club's leaking like a sieve, and which the club aren't happy about. There's too many people willing to step up and talk to journalists about what they're seeing day to day. The James Ducker piece in the Telegraph last week, some really troubling stories. I mean, stories of some staff members being told they're going to have to subsidise their own transport to get to Wembley for the cup final, and then those same staff who've been asked to stump up some money to go are having to book executive cars for directors to get from Old Trafford to London. Again, it's just stuff like that is just very damaging, isn't it?
Well, that's just not reading the room properly, isn't it? And about being tone deaf. And I guess the one positive you can say about Ineos and Sir Jim Ratcliffe, they don't seem to care about the optics or the negative PR, because these stories are coming out almost on a daily basis. It's not a surprise to us that the club are talking about making another 150, 200 people redundant, because we knew about that last week. It's not a surprise to us that the free lunches have been cut at Old Trafford, because we knew about that from our newspaper colleagues this morning. And you mentioned the FA Cup final tickets. There was a lot of furore around that, and that affected the players as well. I'm told Bruno Fernandes, the captain in particular, was not happy about that. So again, that just plays into that narrative that I'm talking about how morale is at this moment in time. And when things are not going well for you on the pitch and you're making these kind of dramatic decisions off the pitch, I think it can quickly become quite a toxic mix. And if Ipswich were to get a result at Old Trafford tomorrow, it could turn nasty quite quickly.
Nice one, Alex. Thanks very much.
Thanks, guys.
Alex Crook, our chief football correspondent, there on that news that there are more redundancies and quite a lot of other changes as well going on at Old Trafford as they seek to save a big chunk of money.
It just doesn't look good. I mean, as I think ultimately, if on the pitch they start doing the business, and I'm sure fans,
it takes the heat off a bit.
Fans will ultimately kind of, as harsh as it sounds, maybe forget a little bit about these headlines about lunches and things like that. But it doesn't look like that's going to happen anytime soon. And until they get rid of some of the big wages, and who's going to take them?
Well,
who's going to take Casemiro?
I mean, Casemiro said, "I want to stay for another year." I'm thinking, sure you do.
Paul Hawksbee and Andy Jacobs, Monday to Friday afternoons 1 till 4 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.